Hi there, my name is Scott Minor, and I do something that I call tangents, but this is going in that stream, but it's going to be a little bit different. I want to talk about Katie Hobbs. Uh, I'm recording this on the 10th of June, 2022. Katie Hobbs is running for governor and is the most likely Democratic nominee. There are two candidates, and two remaining candidates in the primary. I really have some very strong objections to her, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. I have a tendency to ramble on, so I'm going to try to keep this concise by my standards. But I really have some, I just basically do not want to vote for her in the fall. And it's very likely that we're going to have a situation where it is the Democratic gubernatorial candidate and then someone like Kari Lake, who is a ridiculous MAGA person. And I'm first off, just in general, I'm very tired of being put in the position where I have to vote for someone like Joe Biden or go out and campaign for someone like Hillary Clinton and vote for her because obviously Trump is so horrible. I think it's a given. Trump is an anathema. I'm going to do whatever I can to prevent him from getting elected. But then I find myself in this position where, to me, it's essentially like having a gun pointed to my head. It's like, okay, you can vote for this person. I mean, Hillary, at least I can make a affirmative argument for, but Biden, terrible person. And so many things that I just go back to the 80s when he ran and got drummed out for plagiarism. And to me, this should have ended his political career. And the fact that it didn't is just the fact that he went on to be senator and vice president and now president. It just shows that we have no threshold. But anyway, getting on to Katie. I am not going to vote for her in the fall. I've made peace with this. I'm not going to vote against her, but I'm going to sit that one out if she's the nominee. I would very much like to vote against Kari Lake or whoever the Republicans run. Why is that? Well, I have a few things that really bother me about her. Generally speaking, I voted for Kyrsten Sinema for Senate twice, and I regret this. I knew even at the time that I didn't really want to, but I did it, and finally I was able to make peace doing it because after a lot of arm twisting, she finally said that if she was in the Senate, she would have not voted to confirm Kavanaugh. Now, the fact that she had to have her arm pulled for that, and even then it was kind of yeah, I would call that a red flag. But she was again up against someone horrible, and so you find yourself, like, if you're a principled person, it's very tempting to think, okay, well, I'm in this situation, I have two choices, one of them sucks even more, I gotta pick the one that sucks less so that I can avoid the one that sucks more. And that's sort of how our electoral system is set up. So it's a thing that I keep experiencing cycle after cycle, and it's really disheartening. It's really frustrating. And I'm a person who cares. I know so many people who don't care, and they just don't vote because it feels, at a certain point, it's like, why bother? And I get where they're coming from. I'm not in that group, but I understand them. So I ran for Congress in 2018, and I didn't do a great job of it, and I learned a lot in the process, but I did realize there are a lot of reasons why people tend to become career politicians. There are reasons why there's sort of a path from being in the state legislature to some kind of statewide office, like Secretary of State, to governor, or similarly to running in the House and running in the Senate, and so on. And I don't think that the reasons for these come down to developing the skills and the techniques and the talents that you need to legislate and to be a good executive in the public office sense. I think they come down largely to developing connections within the local party, building up the infrastructure to have a campaign. And I mean, there are so many barriers when you're running. If you want to run for office, and I encourage people to do this, but if you want to run, you have to understand, just getting the signatures, just before you get the signatures, just filing is a thing that you have to figure out. Not that hard, but it's something. And a lot of people struggle with it. Collecting the signatures, just getting the paperwork together and doing that. Going out and for a statewide office, you need thousands of signatures. And this is if you're running on the Democratic or Republican ticket. If you want to run as an independent, you need several times that, which is one of many things that bothers me. But for now, I want to focus on people running as a Democrat. Now, when Katie Hobbs ran for Secretary of State, in the primary, also 2018, several people ran against her. They collected signatures, and they did this without the backing that she had, managed to get over the threshold by a significant amount, and in particular, Leslie Pico did this, filed her stuff, and should have competed in the primary, but not even, and this annoys me as well. This is one of these things that it's politics as usual. It's just, I'm told by people that I shouldn't be worried about this, I shouldn't be bothered by this because this is just what people do. This is some stuff that campaigns do and candidates do that I loathe, and it is one of the reasons why people don't believe in politics. Instead of actually facing the challenger in the ballot box, they do these things called signature challenges. Now, a signature challenge in principle means that you're filing, or often it's not even you, it's some kind of thinly veiled proxy, which is what Hobbs used. Thinly veiled proxy, obviously connected to the campaign, but it's not in her name exactly, so it's kind of like a little layer, a thin veneer of plausible deniability. But you file this thing and it basically says, well, I don't think your signatures are valid. What does that mean? Well, to me, a valid signature should be a signature that someone who was eligible to sign put in knowing what they were doing. It's like you went out, you got the signature, and it is a legal signature. Now, because of the way that these things are run, we have a lot of laws in Arizona that make signatures not valid for stupid reasons, frankly. Like somebody does something and they get outside of the box, or they put something in the wrong box, or they do any of a large variety of things. They put down an old address, or they do things that do not mean that that person didn't sign it and mean to sign it, but they end up not being a technically valid signature. So you're saying the signatures are not valid, and then it turns out, well, on technicalities, some of them are not. And even more than that, and I think those signatures could be valid, and this is what happened to Leslie Pico. The signatures were perfectly fine, and she just fundamentally did not have time because this signature challenge was filed at the very last moment. And there was not time to go through the legal process of countering the challenge, which prevented her from countering it, which prevented her from being on the ballot, which allowed Hobbs to run unopposed, which meant she automatically got the Democratic nomination and was the Democratic candidate for Secretary of State, which she has since been. To me, and this is just me, I know a lot of people who don't feel this way, but to me, this is horribly unethical. It is completely anti-democratic, small d democratic. It is the antithesis of how politics should run, how elections should be run. It's not, and it also, I care a lot about honor, and maybe I'm weird this way and silly, but I think there's a certain, accusing somebody of essentially fraud, as far as I'm concerned, is what you're doing when you're doing these signature challenges. Now, people don't look at it that way. It's like, oh, we're getting you off on a technicality, and this is just the standard dirty trick that people do. To me, you're essentially accusing somebody, and falsely, of fraud. Now, if you're going to do that, if somebody's going to do something fraudulent, then obviously they should face consequences. But if you're making false accusations of fraud, that is horrible. This is utterly unacceptable as well. So, with enough rambling, hopefully you understand, I'm not a fan of the signature challenges. I don't like or appreciate that she was able to go through without a primary. And this is just one of these things that just annoys me. And it's not just that it annoys me, but it's fundamentally one of the things that's wrong with politics today. And that's Hobbs. Now, another thing, and I don't even need to talk too much about this one because Katie Hobbs has not once, but twice been convicted of racial discrimination against a member of her staff, or now former member of her staff, but still. Former because of racial discrimination, which she was convicted of. That to me, like, first off, the signature challenge thing should do it. I knew Leslie Pico. I knew the other people who were running. I know the work that it takes to collect those signatures, and I know they didn't falsify signatures or do anything like this. They just got taken out on a technicality, and it wasn't even a technicality, it was just timing in this case. And then that alone makes me not like her. Racial discrimination, not accused of, but convicted of, and not once but twice. To me, that alone should knock her out. Do you want this person to be the governor? Certainly not the governor, but also do you want them to be the Democratic representative? And neither one. No, I do not. I find both of these things unacceptable. I know my friend Garrick McFadden wrote a op-ed years ago about this racial discrimination suit, and he wrote a more recent one, and I don't know what his reasons were for this. I'm not going to say anything negative about him, but I suspect that there's a reason, and I don't think it's because he's had a change of heart, that he wrote a recent one saying, well, yeah, she's reconsidered, she's changed, it's okay. I don't accept that. People certainly do change. By all means, people change. People can grow, they can get better, they can become different people. But you don't do it just by deciding and then telling people that you've changed. You have to put in work. And especially if it's something as fundamental as discriminating against people, you're not going to just change that overnight. You have to really make a strong effort. And also, and this is a thing that I get really bothered by as well, like forgiveness is accepting that people have made a mistake, they've accepted that they made the mistake and admitted to it, and they've worked really hard to change it. I'm open to forgiving people. But you have to earn forgiveness. You don't just get forgiveness. I'm not religious, so I don't have any kind of weird hang-ups about this. I think if you want forgiveness, you have to really clearly show that you're sorry. You have to really clearly show that you're never going to do it again. You have to really clearly show that you're making that effort. And even then, even with all of these other things, it's going to be probational for a long time. And I don't think she's ever shown any of this stuff. I don't see any reason to think that she has changed or has reflected. And I certainly, I don't want to give her the benefit of the doubt here because I see no reason to do it. It's just, I'm not going to do it. I do not forgive her and will not do, barring, it would almost be easier to get me to forgive somebody who voted for Trump. And that one, it would take a lot to get me to forgive such a person. I just don't buy it. I do not, Now, is she like a massive malignant racist? Well, probably not. I don't assume she's using the N-word and like doing this kind of stuff. But there's plenty of, like, racism is a spectrum. And there's a lot of room on that spectrum for being problematic without going to that extreme. And I think she's in the unacceptable range for me. And then third, and this is kind of, and again, I'm someone who cares a lot about abortion and reproductive rights. And I'm maybe more sensitive to this stuff than most people. I was recently at the Bans Off Our Bodies rally, and there were a bunch of speakers there, and Katie Hobbs was there, and there was one other speaker who was a little bit weird. But almost all of the speakers were very moving, very strong, very clearly cared, and they would be any of these people. Annalise Ortiz, I would have no question that she was going to be a strong advocate, that she cares, that she means it. But Hobbs, instead, you have this person who's up there and she says a bunch of stuff and it just fell flat. The whole speech to me came off like, I'm a politician, I see this opportunity to speak in front of people and to pretend that I care about something that I know people care about. And it was a campaign moment for her. And I do not believe, like, I don't think she's gonna, like, sign anti-abortion legislation, probably. But I don't think she's gonna be a strong advocate for abortion rights or reproductive rights or anything like this. She also said, she said a number of things that really bothered me, but one of the things she said that just made my ears kind of twinge was, these bans go too far. She didn't say every ban goes too far, which I would say. And I understand, like, some people are not as extreme as me, and they'd be like, well, there's some kind of threshold where it's okay. I don't think so. And especially, I don't want to get into this whole discussion, but there's a lot of reason not to pick some kind of arbitrary cutoff. And if you look at where people actually have abortions in terms of, almost all of them are in the first trimester, and they fall off precipitously after that. And then when it's a later abortion, it's really rare. And it's because of something very serious. It's not like somebody's just like, oh, I'm 8.5 months pregnant and I just feel like having an abortion, so that's not what happens. Almost always it's like someone who actually wants to have their child, and they get there and there's some kind of medical issue that's gonna kill them and the kid. And so they have an abortion very reluctantly, and it's very late in the term. But for the most part, that's not a realistic thing, which is annoying because this is the thing that everybody focuses on who's anti-abortion, or I would say pro-forced birth. They focus on this very rare exception of an exception kind of thing and use that to ban things that are much more, I would say unambiguously, most reasonable people would say they were okay. And they also use it to push in these things like bans within 6 weeks. People don't know they're pregnant in 6 weeks. Especially if you have an irregular period, it's very easy to get to 6 weeks and not realize, or to just barely realize. And especially if you just barely realize and then it takes like a week or so to get it together to do it. But anyway, I don't accept any bans, and the fact that she said that really bothered me. She said a number of other things that just made me think that she's just there because it was an opportunity to talk. And I understand she's a politician. This is what politicians do, but I don't accept it. I don't want somebody who is going to, and especially it annoys me because Planned Parenthood Arizona gave her their endorsement. And I understand, I've had people tell me, Scott, they just endorsed the person who they think is going to win. Okay, why? I've been a member of Planned Parenthood for many years. I care about this stuff. I do not like endorsing Joe Biden, who has been for the Hyde Amendment for, until very recently. He's been, just anti-abortion and pro-forced birth until very recently. He literally is on record saying Roe went too far, is Joe Biden. And they got Planned Parenthood and NARL both gave him their endorsement. Your endorsement doesn't mean anything if you're going to give it to somebody like that. They gave it to, not to bring her up again, but Kyrsten Sinema. And at least Emily's List finally retracted their endorsement of her. But you know, people just get these endorsements and they don't get held to account. Like, if it's me, if I was running either of these organizations or any of these organizations, I would say, okay, yeah, we will give you our endorsement, but you have got to give us, you know, a guarantee essentially that when it comes time, you are going to fight. And if you're not going to fight, we just won't endorse anybody. Yeah. You don't need, it's not like the law is saying like Planned Parenthood has to endorse somebody. They can pass. They could just not endorse anyone for governor. I would be much happier with that. It just bothers me. It just really bothers me. So I am never going to vote for her. And I'm begging and pleading with you. The primary is coming up. If you're in Arizona, do not vote for Katie Hobbs. Don't do it. Vote against her. Just so that I can vote against Kari Lake or whoever is in the general. And also, not just that, but do you really want another Sinema? Like, this is the thing. I talked to so many people. I loathed voting for her, but I did it. And I talked to so many people who are like, and I'm never voting for Sinema again, by the way. But I talked to so many people who are like, oh, Sinema's horrible and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well then don't vote for Katie Hobbs. Like, you can't vote for Sinema or against Sinema until 2024. We have a couple years. You can vote against Katie Hobbs today. Vote against Katie Hobbs. Don't give us another Sinema. That is all I'm asking. So I don't know if anyone's ever going to watch or listen to this, but I really hope so. And please look into her before you vote for her. Just don't do it. I mean, there's no reason that she needs to be the governor. And also, I mean, it's not just Planned Parenthood or it's not just abortion rights or reproductive rights. She's been going to, this is kind of a weird thing to complain about, but she's been going to Pride and the Rainbow Festival and a lot of things like this for a long time. And she gets up and she gives a speech, and it's just obvious that the speech is extremely hollow and that she's only there, not because she's a strong advocate or cares or means anything, but just because it's an opportunity. We don't need more opportunists. We need people who actually care and who are going to do the right things. And we do have, she's not running unopposed in this primary, so you see somebody else in there, vote for him instead. That's all I'm saying. With that, thank you very much. I do appreciate it, and I really hope that I can vote against Kari Lake and the general, because I'm not voting for Hobbs. So please help me. Thank you, and best.